What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, indoors today, Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Nothing much, Mike. Getting ready for this crazy college football season that's about to get underway. I will be at a wedding to start off college football Saturdays, which is problematic at best, but as long as I can get it out of the way now, you know what I mean? It's like, like I do this now, and then I get all my football on the other end.
I guess it depends on how you approach the season, right? Because you're getting out of the way on one of the biggest weekends of the year. There's standalone college football on a couple of nights. We essentially, starting on Thursday night, have 5 straight days of football. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, 5 straight days of football on the college front because there's no NFL games this weekend.
Sweet spot.
And they're the big time out of conference matchups. So you could argue that maybe like middle of the season when you're in conference play could be better because then we get some low.
Oh, true.
You're getting some big time matchups you're missing this weekend.
Mike, why are you reminding me? The wedding's at 7 p.m. I'm happy to be here. I just, I have my phone on me.
Well, 7 p.m. on a Saturday, at least that will give you a place to go put your anxiety while our college football team is playing. We can get to that in a little bit. We got a lot going on in the show today that we're very excited about here. As always, download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Check us out on YouTube, the DraftKings YouTube channel. Subscribe to that. Go to the GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. page, the playlist on there, and watch that. We have our episodes up there. We just had Katie Nolan on yesterday. You guys always love hearing us talk to her. Now you can see us talk to her. It's awesome. And today is going to be another good one. We have Sloane Martin, who is going to be my teammate in my other job this fall, doing college football Saturday night radio for Learfield. You're going to hear me and Sloane on the road all season long. We wanted to stop by and do a little get to know you with Sloane. She is someone who's done a lot of play-by-play. She was a former collegiate athlete playing basketball. She has then transitioned to covering sports, a variety of sports at the Big Ten Network, is the voice of the Minnesota Lynx, and is now going to be teaming up in a booth that is absolutely going to lead college football in wingspan. I don't know how much else I can say because her and I are still going to get to know each other over the course of the next 13 plus weeks, but at the very least, I know we're walking into this with tremendous wingspan. We will also, because this is week 1 of college football, so it begins for real. We're not sliding in with week 0. We're going to give you guys our college football playoff picks in the somewhere along the line on this podcast. Our thick 6 for the weekend. Woo. If any of you have followed me for a long time, you know my penchant for big boy touchdowns, the thick 6, one of the phenomenons that we've gotten to witness, I think, gain even more popularity and traction over the last couple of years. And so we wanted to turn that into a place where we could give you few tips going into the weekend as we all try and go out here and make a little extra money. So it'll be the 6 best bets, the things we're looking forward to into the weekend, that if you want to go and risk the biscuit with us, feel free. We'll have those out here. We're also going to have a special offer for you guys through our friends over at the DraftKings Sportsbook surrounding the Notre Dame-Ohio State game this weekend. Yes. So we'll have plenty of time to tell you about that as we come up in the podcast. But Brandon, before we get to any of the world of college football as it starts to turn this weekend. And by the time people listen to this podcast, the backyard brawl will be over. A bunch of Pitt and West Virginia fans will have gotten to beat the shit out of each other in Pittsburgh for the first time in like 11 years. Love that journey for all you guys. I think Penn State and Purdue will have already played by then. So we'll be coming to this, full disclosure, we're recording before those games have happened for tomorrow. So it is what it is. I hope everyone had fun. But Brandon, we have breaking news out of the world of the NFL that I was just not expecting to pop up on a Thursday.
Somebody's having a really good camp.
Brandon, no, it's even worse than that. According to ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter, the Baltimore Ravens mascot Poe officially suffered a season-ending knee injury during last Saturday's preseason game versus Washington. Sources told ESPN Poe will be placed on injured reserve, and the team is expected to hold tryouts to find a new mascot while Poe rehabs. Get well, Poe. So if you want to start the hashtag GetWellPoe, send your well wishes to the Ravens mascot, who is going to need all of our help getting back on the field. Because, Brandon, you know this, while they say you don't lose your job due to injury, we see far too often in this league that at times when someone else gets an opportunity, there's just no telling what can happen. The Wally Pipp jokes are here and ready to stay. But, man, it's terrible news for the Ravens to start off this season.
It is. Like I said, it's a bad omen for us. We dealt with a lot of injuries at the beginning of last season as well. And everyone, if you enjoy this podcast, you should be thanking my children because they're the only reason why I'll stay on this podcast with this new news that Mike gave me. I want to run and go try out and make a lifelong dream come true for, honestly, whoever would see me and myself as well as Poe. But nevertheless, bills need to be paid, and I have my obligations. I have my priorities, and they lie with you, Mike Gold Jr.
I appreciate that, Brandon. Part of me thinks it'd be great content for the podcast if you went and tried out for Poe anyway. So let's not rule that out right now. I saw Ben Solak over at The Ringer decided that he was going to offer 1,000 retweets and he would try out for Poe. It is currently at 1,300 retweets as of the recording of this podcast. So if we're going to beat the other podcasters to market on this one, Brandon, I think you've got a great strategy here. You bring a natural low bass to this, tons of effort and energy. You've got a great laugh and an infectious smile that would be hidden by a bird mask. So all of these are strengths that I think you can exploit to try and get your way into this
Have I told you that I was a mascot in high school?
No.
Well, that's another podcast for another day, but I have a resume. And that's why I'm saying that's funny you bring up the smile and the laughing thing, because when I used to pose with the cheerleaders at my high school basketball games as the Panther, I would smile real big under the helmet, and I was like, no one can see this. Like, no one can see me do anything under this helmet, and I'm sweating my ever-living balls off. But I like you said, I am here in Jersey, which means I'm closer to Maryland for tryouts. I maybe could hit it on the way home, Mike, after Labor Day weekend. But also, I just felt a new sense of energy about this whole college football weekend, Mike. I'm in New Jersey. I am DraftKings Sportsbook employee, and I also have the app. I think I'm going to be making some wagers and getting some fun on all of these games in a way that I would not be able to if I was in my hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. So, ding, 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 excited again for this season.
Yes, very much so. So we'll let you know what wagers Brandon's going to be placing for the both of us while he is in the Garden State, because we got some ideas that everyone's looking forward to. But Brandon, there is also other NFL news that we should probably talk about, because while Baltimore thinks they have a problem with this mascot situation right now, their problem continues to be that other quarterbacks are getting paid while Lamar Jackson still sits there without a contract. And remember, we heard from Lamar Jackson. He wants to shut off negotiations when we get to week 1. And we got the news yesterday. The Denver Broncos have signed Russell Wilson to a contract extension that will make him a quarterback for that team for the next 7 years. It's a 5-year, $245 million extension with $165 million guaranteed in new money. It is now the third highest in terms of guaranteed money in NFL history, besides Deshaun Watson's $230 and Kyler Murray's $189.5 million. So Wilson, who is 33 years old as of the signing of this contract, is going to be with the Broncos through the 2028 season for a total of $296 million because he has 2 years remaining on his old deal with the Seahawks. So Brandon, the price just went up yet again for a starting quarterback in this league, because if you look at the top 5, and I saw ESPN NFL insider Field Yates tweet this out before, in terms of average annual value, because there's all these ways these quarterbacks can be the highest to blank or the most blank in NFL history, which are the press releases they love getting to put out and their agents love getting to tell people. You now have, Field put this out, the top 5 highest paid quarterbacks in terms of average annual value. Aaron Rodgers at $50.271 million per year. Russell Wilson at $49 million a year now becomes the second highest in terms of average annual value per year. Kyler Murray at $46.1, Deshaun Watson at $46 million a year, and Patrick Mahomes already down at number 5 on that list. And there's a lot, Brandon, that we can take away from this, because I already got asked a question from somebody on a radio station about, well, how is this deal going to age for them? By the end of that deal, how bad is this going to look? Number one, Brandon, that is not what this football team is worried about.
Right.
If you're the Denver Broncos, you've built up this roster to attack this in the here and now. You have wandered through a vast wasteland of mediocre quarterback play since Peyton Manning helped win you that Super Bowl, even as his skill set had declined. You hadn't had an adult in the room at that position in a while that was going to get the things you wanted done. And with Russell Wilson's track record, why wait? 33, I feel like with Russ, we treat him so much older than he is. And maybe that's because he acts like a weird dad and wears a lot of clothes from Tommy
early
Bahama.
Success as well.
But early success also, Brandon, but it's worth reminding, Matthew Stafford was 33 last year.
Wow.
When he came over from the Detroit Lions to the Los Angeles Rams. And we did the same thing. And Brandon, Matthew Stafford had at least had a lot of injury in his career. Like the style that he played coming over was super gritty. We always loved the highlights of him in that game where his shoulders damn near popped out and he still gets up and does the damn thing. For Russell Wilson, before the pin went into his finger last year, that had been a guy who availability was one of his best abilities. He's been one of the most durable quarterbacks in football during his time in Seattle, where he has not always been protected super well either. And so I looked at that and said, for what this league does in protecting quarterbacks, as we talked to Mina Kimes, for how much less we see Russ make use of his legs at this point in his career, this is a great time to be a quarterback if you want to play the game that way for career longevity. And so I look at this, Brandon, like I look at a lot of these other quarterback deals, which is when you know you should go. Like if you believe you've got a guy that you can count on. And Russell Wilson, while the last couple of years haven't been great, has been a guy traditionally you can count on. Much more so in Denver than you've had with any of these other quarterbacks. And if you can solidify that position, knowing for them you've got most of the roster around him built. Like that was the selling point for this team, is all they were was a quarterback away in so many people's minds. If you solidify that position, so now you'll have this window where you feel like you got a really strong team built up around him and you've got a Super Bowl window in the next couple years, even though the AFC West is a hellscape. Maybe it takes into next year for this to really take hold, but when you plant your flag in a quarterback that you know is a proven commodity in this league, the thing everyone's searching for, we've seen that Mahomes deal is the perfect example. Now, that one felt even a little more team-friendly at the time because of the length of the deal and the flexibility it was going to give them. But you look at what a bargain that looks like now for Patrick Mahomes' services already. And in a few years, as we near the $50 million a year quarterback becoming a more regular part of this league, you're going to look back at your team that waited too long to pay your guy when you knew he was the one. Cough, cough, Baltimore. If you decide to let this thing drag over into next season, I feel like you risk making a pretty big mess of things when stability at that spot, while it does create some challenges, I think creates a lot of clarity that we don't often value in the way we talk about this.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of people that can offer that amount of clarity, Mike, and that's why I think it's fair to say that the Baltimore Ravens don't feel like Lamar Jackson offers them that level of clarity well into the future. And I mean, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, who's already gotten a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. That's why I think this Russell Wilson deal is more interesting for those level of quarterbacks, the Matt Ryans of the world, that are good. They've proven that they've been good. At times they've been close to elite MVP level years and things like that, but also have a lot to offer on the way out. With the Walmart money, the deep pockets that the Denver Broncos have, they get an opportunity to get rid of Russell Wilson later on when he is older, and they just pay him some money. But right now he has the peace of mind that the Denver Broncos, top to bottom, want him, need him, and they want him to stay there forever. Like, yes, as bad as of a face of a team as Deshaun Watson is for the Cleveland Browns, that's the exact opposite that Russell Wilson is offering the Denver Broncos for the foreseeable future. So it really is just kind of like locking up a huge sponsorship.
Well, and once you paid the price you did for him as far as a trade, there's no choice but to really sign him to an extension. Right. You traded 5 picks, including 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, and 3 players in the tight end and Noah Fant that you really liked. And when you see those kind of price tags paid for trade, it behooves you to go and get the deal done pretty quickly and to have that understanding that that was why you brought this person over here, not just for a splash at that price tag, but that they're going to be with you for a while. And it's worth noting, through the 2028 season would make Russell Wilson, I believe, 38 or 39. I don't know when his birthday specifically is. So he won't be north of 40 at the end of this deal, but he'll be in his late 30s. And again, I think that's where the durability of a quarterback who has displayed his skill set matters. What they do and how they orchestrate this offense is going to matter. But Brandon, I do think now it is interesting because for them, this felt inevitable. And for him to be the third highest paid in terms of guarantee makes sense. The Deshaun Watson is clearly something that's kind of messed up everyone's math as far as negotiations. But he had youth and the strange market for all the reasons that we know on his side. Kyler Murray, we've seen, though he is the second most and the most in the non-Deshaun Watson category, we know even that was complicated. And so now, as we continue to stare at the Ravens and wonder what is going on, and I think for this week, when Lamar has talked about, they found time whenever they've had it to talk and all these things about their negotiations, this is your last real chance because next week you are going to start true game week. You had a little bit of built-in extra time in this last week, and you hope they've been productive with it. Because again, if you get past week 1 and Lamar is really going to be focused on playing and not on negotiating, now you risk the Joe Flacco. And it's only a risk in your pocketbook because if Lamar Jackson goes out there and balls his ass off this year and gives you exactly, and Brandon, when you look at the way this lines up, the team is healthier on both sides of the balls than it was last year. You added another pass catcher at a position that he loves, and Isaiah Likely in that tight end room. Your offensive line, Ronnie Stanley coming back is a huge boost for that team heading into the season. It all lines up. If you're Baltimore, you want this to be that kind of season. You believe you can take back the AFC North this season after a reprieve last year where the Bengals got over on everybody. And if that happens and Lamar plays any part of this season or the entirety of this season like he played the first half of last year, you're going to end up backing up even more money or worse, Brandon, playing the franchise tag game with a guy your organization has long professed to love. And it's a dangerous game to get into. It's one thing when Kirk Cousins is your quarterback in Washington. It's a lot different than what we've heard for the last 2 years is we love Lamar, we want him here long term, and we've built our team around his identity. That's the dangerous game they're playing if this doesn't get done within, really, I think the next few days or early into next week when your quarterback starts to get ready for a damn game.
Yeah, I hear you, but you're talking about John Harbaugh and you're talking about Lamar Jackson, and I think those are two people who like to play the gamble game. And obviously I think that the Ravens might miss out on getting a deal with Lamar Jackson, but I think Lamar Jackson is focused on trying to win a Super Bowl with the Ravens because he feels that window. He knows this team better than any of us know this team, and he knows that he could lead this team to a Super Bowl, contract or not. And I don't know why he's kept the money thing over his head. Maybe he feels like he wants to play for the money, or maybe he feels like he doesn't want to play for the money. Whatever the reason being, the stuff on the field that has nothing to do with dollars, that's what he's in control of. And I have faith in him right now, this year, and these next couple years, because he's had no reason for him not to. But him being a quarterback who can get plus 1,000 yards rushing in a season is one of the reasons why I think the Ravens may be slow, or maybe one of the reasons why they haven't gotten to a price point yet, because I'm sure the farther out you get, the more muddy it gets to how confident they are that Lamar can stay healthy during those time periods, even though he has up until this point.
Yeah, the farther out you get, the more of these contracts that start to stack up underneath and give Lamar more and more credence to just go in there, kick up his feet on the desk and say, this is what it is. And I think the part that's confusing for a lot of people is, Brandon, this has always been a front office in Baltimore that people have looked at and thought has handled business really well. And Eric DeCosta is one of the more competent GMs in the NFL. And so everyone looks at this and wonders, and listen, there is the complicating factor of a player negotiating on behalf of himself without normal representation like we've seen. But this is another one added to the pile. Denver finds their guy finally after years of failure in the draft for John Elway and company. And Mr. Unlimited continues to add to the pocketbook. Denver, enjoy a lot of very cringeworthy local advertisements. Can't wait to watch that. Love that for you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk to Minnesota Lynx play-by-play and my new partner in the booth for Learfield on College Football Saturday nights, Sloane Martin, about the upcoming football season. What better way to connect than in a public platform for other people to hear? Boy, can you tell I was raised by someone that was on air a lot.
Yeah. I'm used to it. And actually this is even better because, you joked about it yesterday with soaking through your shirt when we're in Gainesville. Like, that's going to be my introduction to you too, is just like, I sweat. We're meeting in person the first time,
see.
and just like, I cannot hide this from you for a whole day being outside in Central Florida.
No,
So
we really don't have a shot when it goes to this. So
No.
I think the podcast has already begun now too.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
This is our introduction as Sloane Martin joins us here on the podcast, who is going to be with me in the booth, and boy oh boy, we're looking forward to it this fall. So Sloane, you and I got tabbed for College Football Saturday Night for Learfield Sports. This was something that, I got to watch my dad do last year in the booth with Kate Scott, who did a phenomenal job, is now off as the voice for the Philadelphia 76ers. So they graduated the inaugural class, and they tapped us in here. So first off, thank you for joining the podcast. I'm excited to get to know you all this fall, but like I just said, this is sort of strange because you and I know of each other. I've seen plenty of your work, especially as we got down through the end of the WNBA season here, but you and I are getting ready to meet in person, and now I feel like our biggest task is going to be figuring out how to keep the broadcast booth somehow cool enough for us to both not melt during the course of a game.
Yeah, my expectations for that are just nothing. I mean, I was trying to even think as I'm going to be packing for this trip. Am I more apprehensive of doing a game at Huntington Bank Stadium here in Minneapolis, where I live, in like November, or a game in Central Florida in September? And I think it honestly might be this game in Florida, just because, being a Midwesterner for several years now, I'm not equipped for that anymore.
No, we're just not built like that. And so we'll get a little. Yeah, Brandon.
I'll say Ross Tucker came on this podcast and he let me know, baby dry cloths. These little things are the go-to to keep from sweating during at least podcasts. I hope they can stand up during broadcasts as well. Maybe a couple of these bad boys, a little 4-pack, just hit all the hot spots. And then one for the forehead brow. I don't know where you sweat, because we all have our sweat spots. Mike, we used to talk about this in college all the time. It was like, where you sweat first? Where you sweat first?
Yeah, no, the initial sweat's always the one that you got to combat here. But like Sloane, I have very real memories. Last year, I called a game down in Oxford at the Grove, and I decided to, before that game, because part of the beauty of doing this in a radio format, you can watch us on Facebook Live and on YouTube as well on the Learfield pages, but doing it radio, we get to dress down. Like, I personally think, and I don't know where you fall on this, because you commentate for the Minnesota Lynx, like we said, you do stuff over at Big Ten Network, like, been doing this a while, and we all have to dress up for those 30 seconds that we're on TV at the start of a game, and then we're sitting there in dress clothes for the other 2 to 3 hours of whatever's going on, which I think is ridiculous. And so I'm very excited that we get to wear quarter zips and hang out on this, because it feels like the way we should be calling inherently sweaty events.
That is so true. Like, I don't even understand how sideline reporters do it, whether it is football or baseball, and their hair is so smooth. It's not frizzy. They're wearing, nice dresses where you can, see that kind of underarm band that's happening. And I have so much respect for the people who are out in the elements and doing this, and because that is not me. But you're right. I mean, I'm looking through my closet. I own like 11 suits of various colors to not wear to certain campuses. I mean, I still remember the dagger that I got from Sparty at Michigan State, because I was wearing like maize and blue. Because I was like, well, Michigan's not playing, but still was noticeable. So you have to think about that on radio. You don't really have to think about that either. Paring down my makeup too. I am used to caking it on. I feel like it is a theatrical production every time I do a game, and I wish I had like trying to like cut down on my waist, so I have this like cloth that I use each time, and you can like see my face on it by the time I take it off. So that's also kind of like a nice thing too, to just be like, I don't have to like put on a whole new face and a whole new person. Although, Mike, I will say that when it comes to winter games, I am wearing my snow boots. Like, I am dressed to the nines with the ugliest man boots, because I wear a size 13 men's and have since I was 13 years old. The ugliest shoes of all time, and I have no shame.
Listen, you shouldn't have any shame on that front here. It's about function. While I am certainly someone who can't talk, I have, the fixation with shoes and usually wear them to a point where by the end of the season, once I hit a cold spot here, I'm probably regretting what I've done. But that's function. And for someone that has now had to spend so much of their life in Minnesota, where that is the realest reality possible, what was that like? For you, so much of the job for you has been Minnesota-based, from WCCO onto what you're doing in the Big Ten with the Lynx. You're from California originally, so how has that adjustment been for a California kid come to find themselves working in the Midwest around sports?
Well, I grew up, and little did I know, I grew up in Big Ten country. So, going to Poly Pavilion and the Coliseum and the Rose Bowl. I mean, I even had my swim practices at the Rose Bowl too, and who would have known that, they would be wrapping indoor conference here into adulthood. But I ended up playing Division III basketball because basketball was my identity as a kid, as a high schooler. And I was neither 6'4" to try and get, Division I scholarships. I'm just under that. And I used to wish so much that I was at least 6'4". But I also can't dribble, can't shoot threes, and really I'm just good at post moves under the basket, fouling people, setting screens. So I ended up being a D3 baller in Western New York. And then you're just kind of there. I mean, I was really a contrarian kid where it was who would want to spend their whole life here in Southern California? I'm over it. It's too hot. There's the traffic. Who would even want to be here and never leave? Not me. So I'm going to go to the opposite side of the country where my dad actually is from. So there was some connection there, but it was just we're just going for it. And then you just end up, getting jobs. I met my future spouse there. And then, it's been Minnesota for 6 years now. So I feel firmly, as a Midwesterner, but I gotta say, I don't adjust. My husband still walks our dog, our Greyhound, in the wintertime because it takes me a long time to recover. I don't have the blood.
It's, and in fairness, I've always said, as someone who grew up in central Connecticut for the vast majority of my life, you shouldn't get used to cold. I've been in cold my whole life, and I still don't like cold, and I still don't adjust to it well. I understand that as a person living in Southern California now, I'm about to get softer here, but I don't begrudge people for living in a place where the weather is better and then complaining when it's comparatively cold. They made the smart decision to live there. I chose to live in the cold place for a long time, Brandon.
Right, and you get used to layering. That's what you get used to, and it's that those first initial. No, Mike, not even layering.
Oh no, I'm 100%
okay.
with you. I'm saying that's the toughest part about it is in cold places you got to strip off the layers as soon as you get in, or else you're cooking yourself again because the heat's running in every building. So that becomes the difficult choice in all of this. Sloane, I did want to ask, because you mentioned going from being a D3 baller and then starting to get the jobs. Did you know you always wanted to do this? Was broadcasting and play-by-play always something that was in your future?
Yeah, since I was in high school. I mean, I looked up to people like Susie Kohlberg, Alex Flanagan, just a couple of examples, Michelle Tafoya, when she was a broadcaster, of just this authoritative voice that they were on the sidelines. And there really was no play-by-play to look up to. I mean, Pam Ward, I remember doing games growing up, and she was someone who I look forward to. Beth Mowins, of course, and I've been able to meet both of them, which has been fantastic. But that was kind of the end of the line. And then it was once I got to college, I was able to put the headset on, and I was this is what I want to do. Part of it is just being bossy. Part of it is being a control freak, not trying to psych you out here, Mike, before we work together. But that's generally, I think it's the only child in me that just generally kind of likes to navigate things, wants to kind of be in charge of the ship here. So, but everything will be fine. I promise. I'm great to work with. But it kind of started from there. And so D3, you play back to back, women and men. So I would play in a game. I was didn't even shower in between. I would just put nicer clothes on, take my uniform off, and cheeks bright red, sit down and do our little webcast for the men's game and do color play-by-play right after it. Wow. So those are the humble beginnings of how I got going here.
That's incredible.
Awesome.
So would you be prepping for your opponent that you were going to play in the game as a player and the opponent that your guys' men's team was going to face for the game after as you're getting ready for these?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I didn't have like access to their scout or anything like that. And there's only so much information that's out there. In like 2007, I think D3 Hoops was still, was around during that time. I mean, that's been around for a really long time. Credit to them for covering D3 sports. But yeah, that's pretty much what it was like. And also the thing, you guys, is that I am also just like a nerd. I just have always like done well in school. I like studying, and this is like professional like homework. That's my job, is like doing homework, and then the games are the tests, and I try to ace the tests, that's what's enjoyable.
I love that. Well, it's going back as a student, and obviously growing up in California, and hoops being such a big part of it. Like, who was your idols growing up when it comes to on the court playing basketball?
Oh gosh, you'll love this. I actually grew up a Clippers fan, and this was the Sam Cassell, Lamar Odom, Los Angeles Clippers. Corey Maggette was a player who I love, but you know who I love the most? Elton Brand. Loved him. I loved how he shot with his hand directly over his head. He was like a 20 and 10 machine. That mid-range game is still so deeply important to me that he had. And then on the women's side, I mean, Cheryl Ford, was someone who I love for a long time. Lauren Jackson, who won a couple MVPs. So definitely the bigs, who I could never model my game after because they were too good. But yes, I grew up a Clippers fan because honestly, they were cheaper. And again, the contrarian child kind of thing. This is when the Lakers were winning all their championships. They had Shaq and Kobe. We'd be on the playground during recess and people would be calling out, well, I'm Derek Fisher, I'm Kobe. And I just didn't want that, going against the flow.
Feed me.
Feed me, absolutely feed me. So then you go from being a baller your whole life, obviously watching and looking up like that. You strap on the headset and you're in your element there, and then you start to get more opportunities here, including going back to 2019. That was the first season with the Minnesota Lynx for you. So going from being a baller, doing the back-to-backs both as a player and then as a play-by-play, what was that like sitting in the chair and getting to, commentate on the game that you had played now at the highest level here with the Women's Professional League?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about being in the WNBA, and now I'm doing sideline as well for Bally Sports North. So I am right next to their bench and seeing everything happen in front of me. So to see a player like Sylvia Fowles, I mean, here's the thing. I even joke about this on broadcast. I am an unabashed post defender. I mean, that is like my favorite part of the game, the footwork, the back to the basket. I don't care if it's a shot from 3 feet out in the paint. That's where I want to see the action happen. So to have that in front of me the last couple of years with an all-time great has been a truly, truly special thing. And, that's what I bring up with the WNBA too, is like how difficult it is to make an NFL roster. How many people want to be in that role? How many players are drafted year after year? Well, in the WNBA, you're looking at the entire world of talent, of which there is a lot. So many countries are really good when it comes to women's basketball. So when I see those 144 players, it's like, my God, they're just the best on earth.
What was that like with Sylvia down the stretch? Because I feel like as we talked so much this season, and this rose to the national level, obviously, when the Lynx season ended, because so many people have been focused on, rightly Sue Bird, what was going on in Seattle. But as so many people close to the W said, Sylvia has been such a dominant and important force for this league for so long. So what was seeing that ending like for you up close as you guys knew what was coming to a close this season?
Yeah, the thing about Sylvia Fowles is that it is unfortunate that maybe a lot of basketball fans don't know a lot about her, because she's been that epitome of someone who just very quietly does the work and does the hard work. A 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, the all-time rebounding and double-doubles leader. Like, just think about the pounding that is, and running baseline to baseline, your entire career, the double teams, and just the physicality that you're going to take. Sylvia Fowles is interesting. So just a quick note, I try not to, when it comes to talking about athletes, say things like they're classy. Like, I kind of hate that word, because we can like players, but we don't really know them. And I think there are plenty of examples of that. That's coming from someone like me who, learned about Ben Roethlisberger when I was a teen, and that kind of cognitive dissonance, and that was like a difficult thing to go through. But Sylvia Fowles is truly the epitome of someone who lights up a room, who makes people feel special. She hugs everyone, and I thought I gave great hugs. I have a 6'4" wingspan, but getting a hug from a 6'6" center, nothing tops that. So she's so generous, very caring with her time, but then just seeing, and this is kind of the interesting thing when we talk about retirements and when players decide to make that decision, as Sue Bird is having a fantastic playoffs for the Seattle Storm, who are in the semifinals right now, is that she still is playing. Same with Candace Parker, same draft class in 2008. She's playing like you could see more years ahead. And I think that was the coolest thing to see, as someone who is so dedicated to their body, to their craft, to excellence, to competitiveness, but finally say, this is it. This is enough for me.
Did she ever talk to you about the Mortician transition?
Oh,
because
yes.
that was a fascinating story to watch coming out of the end. I'm blanking on who wrote a story about this on ESPN.com. I apologize, and I'll try and look it up, but seeing the story about this being the career she wanted to move into next, was that something you guys at all well known about?
Oh, yeah. And, but you know what? She's also kept things under wraps. Like, it wasn't until this season that she revealed that she's a knitter. Like, just this 6'6" woman who has this whole knitting room and all different colored yarns. Like, even her own teammates, like Nafisa Collier, her teammate and an Olympian in 2021, just got this gift box of like blankets and booties for her new child, and was like, wait, you made this? You just kept this art a secret from us. So yeah, it did take a little while into her career, because she would actually study, you know, while she was on the road. She was continuing to have testing as she is dominating the paint in the WNBA. So I think, where did I see this? It might have been in some article that was written about her or on Twitter, where it's like, think about how creepy that would be, though, if you see this child who is Sylvia Fowles, who's like playing funeral with her dolls. I mean, I would certainly be creeped out by that, but she just turned into a marvelous person regardless.
That is amazing. So it was Kevin Van Valkenburg, who friend of the podcast here. I love Kevin's work, who wrote that. And yes, that was the part that stuck out to me the most, is she talked very glowingly about playing funeral as a kid. Like, I understand, and Brandon, listen, you're a parent, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here. Is there a point where if your kid's playing funeral, you have to wonder about what their plans are for the future? Because Mortician would not be the first thing that comes to mind for me. I'm like, am I raising Dexter here potentially?
Is there some like embedded trauma I need to like dig deeper into? No, we're told as parents to identify early on what they like and feed it, right? So if that happens, you would probably have to, like, take them to a crematory or something. I don't know what the next step is for that interest level, but you definitely got to feed.
That is true. Things. Finding out what like the AAU circuit for future morticians is has to be a fascinating process for a parent. Like, what does
internship at the cemetery?
Yeah,
But Sloane, as you get to learn players like this, like Sylvia Fowles, like in the depths of it, you say you being a nerd yourself, like how much more do you appreciate the wholeness of the human that's in front of you, not only the WNBA player, by finding these little factoids out?
Yeah, so I think especially going back to the 2019 season when I was doing radio for them, so I was on the road with them every single game, and you see what they go through. I mean, you hear it a lot, I'm sure, on social media about how difficult it is in the WNBA when they are doing commercial flights. And, they try and, at least with the Minnesota Lynx, make sure the players are, taken care of as much as possible, and they do a great job, where it's us, the staff that's traveling, that are like pulling bags off of the carousel at the airport and underneath the bus and stuff like that. But it is still, you think about other leagues and the NBA, where you have a whole staff that does just that, and you go to your room and then your bag just shows up. So I think seeing that day in, day out work, that lifestyle, being on the road so much, especially when you put her USA basketball experience into that too, and her 5 gold medals, you think about the dedication, the time away from family, the interruptions to your life, how the people in your life have to completely work around your career and what you're doing. So seeing that day in and day out, I think, gives you even more of an appreciation of what she can do on the court, because you see that greatness even with those kinds of, really those interruptions that other athletes don't have to deal with.
You talk about that at the professional level. You also call plenty of sports over at the Big Ten Network here, women's basketball, hockey, softball, dealing and seeing the life around college athletes versus pro athletes. How does that sort of make the experience different for you in the way that you approach it?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because in college, things are so regimented. I was even thinking about this, Mike, when reading about Billy Napier, who is extremely regimented. I mean, making his players wear white socks, all the same white socks during practice. They've already done a game day walkthrough dress rehearsal, so they know what to expect. And the players have praised him for how he's instituted this kind of organization where every part of their day is mapped out. And even traveling with college too, I should say, my time at the University at Buffalo doing women's basketball for them, which the MAC will always have a special place in my heart. But you see, they have study time together, study hall together, just everything is mapped out, every single meal together. Then you go to the pros and you're completely on your own. So if you were depending on that kind of structure in your life that someone else imposed onto you, that does make it different when you are, approaching these different sports and seeing the difference there, where it's like where you eat, when you eat, what you eat, how much you eat is obviously going to be dictated by you, as opposed to college where just everything is mapped out. So I think that's interesting when it comes to seeing who makes it to the next level and feeling like, can you have the ability to be that professional athlete? It is a huge difference and it is a huge jump.
Well, and seeing that now for college players, I think it's fascinating to watch all the developments we've seen around the sport. And you would certainly see this. We talk about it so much through the lens of football, but I'm fascinated as to what the experience is like now in the NIL world and with all of the different things that have come into play, because we've seen especially women's basketball players on college campuses have been some of the most popular athletes on the highest level, with a lot of these players garnering interest. It does change your responsibility because now as a player, you do have the ability to market yourself differently. So that part of it, I think, is an interesting lens to view how you end up making that transition. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I've always said, if these are supposed to be institutions of higher learning, this is an opportunity to teach in a class that's much more reflective of skills you're going to need for the rest of your life, where you've got to even balance your schedule even more now that you're managing business opportunities. You've got to learn financial literacy in a way that isn't always taught well to college athletes. So I don't know if that's anything that you've seen working out practically yet, what the differences you've noticed since NIL and the transfer portal have become more of a part of college sports, but I think that's sort of a fascinating bridge between the college game we've known and the pro game you were talking about.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. And because you really do see, especially women's athletes, which I do, the vast majority of my work in, where you see this empowerment, where they are also the ones that are sought after. I mean, here in Minnesota, we watch Paige Beckers really closely. She's from here in the Twin Cities. I mean, she is, not just a superstar college athlete, but even just like any athlete. She's in Gatorade commercials that I see on my TV, for example. Caitlin Clark we have here in the Big Ten, who's getting shout outs from NBA players. And she's got, a couple NIL, including like Hy-Vee, which is a local supermarket brand. So, but it's interesting to see, because you're right, there is this extra bit of responsibility. I think there needs to be a shift from seeing this as just, putting a couple posts up, like the way people don't really respect what content creating is. And whether that's because it's mostly, women who do it, for example, that you think it's just not work or not a job. That is a job. And these athletes have to learn that it is a job and you're being paid. But, the interesting thing is, though, is when, I look at it like with a Quinn Ewers, for example, who takes 2 snaps or something, and he's got, this huge deal, then transfers away. So that's, that is an interesting part of the NIL discussion too. But I think you're totally right, Mike, that it has to be kind of this all-encompassing way to move forward. That shouldn't just be a thing on the side or something that's just sprinkled in to the athlete experience, because it is here and it is big. I mean, we're talking about huge, huge money.
It's massive money that we've seen building up and changing the sport. And it's not just on the player side. I mean, right in Big Ten country, I don't have to tell you, I'd imagine everything smells like new car smell around there right now. Like, I just assumed once they put pen to paper on that new TV rights deal that now the entire Big Ten just smells like a brand new car and freshly printed dollar bills at this point. Have you already seen, like, just Bentley logos randomly popping up on campuses and things like that now?
Oh boy, I'd love to say that. And because that's the thing, I support the athletes. I support them, getting that bag, as the kids say. But no, not at least at the University of Minnesota. But you can see it, because once that deal was signed, you could definitely feel like all the athletic directors and all the presidents are like, Okay, when is that going to start coming our way, for example? But I would say that those kind of cars certainly stand out in Minneapolis. It's not one that you want driving around, getting rust on it, and driving in a foot of snow. But if they've got it, more power to them here in Dinkytown.
Yeah, you don't want to see a Bentley go out on a frozen lake in the winter for ice fishing and then make the mistake of driving under a bridge or something like that. That one's going to be a harder thing to fish out and feel good about what you got to do with the upholstery inside. So all difficult, very unique, very wonderfully Minnesotan problems there. But it's been a very changed landscape for that, Brandon.
Well, I just want to speak to what you guys are going to be doing this season a little bit, because I feel like as much as we herald and like to prop up these athletes for how much they're dedicated to the game, how much they sacrifice, how much the travel and all the things that go into it, you two, the people that step into your shoes, and shouts out to you, Sloane, we're shoe twins. It's a whole different ball game, and you guys are quite literally built different, right? So with that being said, Sloane, what's something that you're excited about? Like, what's something that you enjoy when it comes to the travel, the test, the test of the game,
Yeah.
and the study, homework, like all different things. Like, I'm a big guy. I talk to Uber's drivers. Like, I usually come out of an Uber ride with a card or a cell phone number. Like, I'm weird like that. But like, what are those little things that you are looking forward to going out on the road? Not specifically with Mike, but following all these college football games this year.
Yeah, I'm similar to you, although I kind of let them take they take the first approach. If you want to talk to me,
right,
I will engage. If you want to stay silent, I'm totally with that. So maybe I have fewer, cards and numbers than you. But I would say I love just seeing campuses. Also, the nerdy part of me is I'm really into urbanism. So kind of how cities are built up, looking at the density, the walkability, just seeing the buildings, the architecture, things like that. How bike friendly is it? How pedestrian friendly is it? Like, those are the things I look at when I go to new places. I have been known to visit either state capitals or museums if I have time on the road. So those are things I look forward to the most. I feel like just taking in just a whole new place is very fun for me. And maybe that also stems from growing up in Southern California, where till I was 18 years old, I had only ever been to like 4 states because we would drive everywhere. So it was pretty much either Nevada or Arizona, and you're seeing a whole lot of desert there. And I love the desert, but didn't get to see a whole lot else. And so I think now I just love taking advantage of that and seeing new places, like not just the restaurants and stuff that we're certainly going to be going to and is like a part of our job, which is amazing. But I think taking in the whole thing of these cities and campuses and just checking them out. Like, not like I'm a prospective student or anything by any means. We are too far beyond that. Besides thinking, could I imagine myself here? Although I will say that when I went to Evanston, I was like, I can't believe I went here and chose to play Division III basketball instead of going to this like wonderful institution. Like, who did not knock sense into me to make this decision and just let it be all on my own? But yeah, that's generally what I look forward to, Brandon, is like just seeing what's going on and walking around, really.
Yeah, because I promise the world needed another Northwestern journalism school student making their way into play-by-play. Thank you for diversifying the pot in here, Sloane, with your choice. I saw way too much damn purple during my time at ESPN. Purple and Syracuse orange everywhere. Anish Shroff,
Yes.
I love you, but God, there's just there's so much orange. But this is gonna be good because you mentioned the food portion of it. That is my love language for going through these college towns. My crew last year can attest. I think I probably added a few pounds to everybody by the end of the season just because I'm like a bloodhound for carbs and usually like an ice cream place in town. So I like this idea of mixing in a little bit of culture there. The only place where I feel like we might have to think about looking and re-enrolling is if we get a game at UT Austin. Because if we're at Texas Austin, there is a class on Taylor Swift being taught in the English literature department. And I feel like if there was one thing I was going to go back to school for, it would be to get my doctorate in Swift studies.
I thought you were going to say like, oh, they have great barbecue. It's a great place to go. But that just takes it to a whole nother level here.
It's just what the heart wants at this point. And I'm not going to ignore that because, like you said, we're here to explore and kind of get the whole picture of it. I'm with you. It's fun to go to these places that I didn't get to play at as a player. I haven't got yet to visit as a broadcaster, and especially in places like the Southeastern Conference where we're going to get to start the season. Our first 3 weeks are out there, and like we really get a good cross section of not only the college football conferences but the landscape. Our first 3 weeks, we're in Gainesville for week 1 for Florida and Utah. Week 2, Oklahoma State hosting Arizona State and Stillwater. And then week 3, we get to head up to Seattle for Michigan State and Washington. So we're getting a little bit of everything in there. Now, you mentioned being very into studying for the test. Have you already mapped out things about these cities that you're looking to try and get to when you're there? Like, do you have, was it you said the word and it blew my mind. Is urbanism the word?
Yes.
Yes. I was sitting here furiously Googling, like, what did I miss? So have you scouted out the urbanist qualities in Gainesville that you want to try and attack?
You mean that hasn't come up on the GoJo podcast before this?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're breaking new ground for our listeners, so thank you, because we're just here making them dumber every day.
You know what? That is something more of an airport thing that I do. That is like, I'm just relaxing.
Really?
Maybe I've done like, I need to like take my mind away. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be sitting there like furiously studying over my board, in the airport. I might like go over some things, but it's like the work has been done. So we're just like kind of, we're just going to clear the mind a little bit, look at other things. We go to Google Maps, we do, Street View, see what things look like, maybe check Reddit or something like that. But it also is just like, it's just walking out of like your hotel room, which like may not be great in week 1 since we're not technically in Gainesville, and like no offense to other cities in Florida, but maybe not a whole lot. I mean, my image of Florida, and I've been there a couple times just for work, but like not the most walkable, not the most dense. I think of like 55 mile per hour highways where people go like 85, and if you're a pedestrian, you're like Frogger trying to make it across the street. So definitely something for when we get to like Stillwater I'm excited for. But like, yeah, that is something where there's not a ton of research. It's just like walk out the door and like, this is the impression we get.
Well, speaking of that, I don't know if you frequent gas station restaurants, but Florida, plenty of those, especially in Gainesville. A lot of tents outside, barbecue pits where they're just serving up. They say gator bites, but you got to actually taste it and see. But yeah, there's a lot of gas station places to eat out there in Gainesville. Florida in general.
That is good to know.
That was my ticket last year in Mississippi. Is the first thing everyone told me, and shout out to my friend Alex McDaniel who put me on to the gas station fried chicken in Oxford, Mississippi. I had Sloane in one weekend at Ole Miss last year, 4 meals at gas stations in a 2.5-day stretch. And
oh my gosh.
There's a reason I did sweat nuclear style through my shirt in the booth, is because it was just grease pouring out of my pores at that point. So again, this is part of the balance in this, is while you're taking the urbanist approach and going to try and find something interesting for us to hone in on there, I am going to be likely digging through some gas stations' reserves of food while you're doing that searching. So it's yin and yang. It's good balance.
But I honestly want to jump in. I've never been to an SEC town at all.
Wow.
And I've never really been to the South either. I mean, I've been to just Miami and Orlando once, and in Jacksonville. But like, it's not really the same thing. I feel like when you're in Central Florida, you're an SEC country. Like, I want to be trying those gas station food items too. Maybe not the gator bites. And this is something, Mike, I have to say, like, I was going to tell you maybe this, privately, because it's something I'm ashamed of. But why not just do it publicly here too? Is that I am a picky eater. Like, I don't even really like sandwiches that much. So for our adventures here, it's maybe going to be a little tough.
Sandwiches,
and I'm willing to take
much.
So what else is on the no-fly list? Because if and you're not the first person I've encountered who's been anti-sandwich, although most of that has been tied to wanting to try foods that are a little bit more unique. Sometimes a sandwich is like an omelet where you can make it with whatever is around and just sort of use it to trap it all in there. So what else is on the Sloane Martin food no-fly list as far as being a picky eater?
Seafood. Just like all of it.
All of it, Sloane?
I know. Yeah. I mean, I'll eat like maybe canned tuna.
But usually that's for like
Chicken
raw
and sea.
stuff. Oh, wait a minute. So you would do the raw and not the fried? Because usually people that can't do seafood just deep fry it and it's like, okay, yum, 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 fish sticks.
Right, like fish and chips, it looks so good. Scallops with like the sear on it looks so good. I just can't. I don't know. It's just like I don't know if it's like my upbringing or just like my mind, but this is what it is.
All right, you know what? Seafood is one, though, that not unfamiliar with other people on that boat. I understand it's not for everyone. It's a unique texture and all these things. This is going to be the real make or break for us, Sloane, and
God.
I'm going to hold my breath through the answer here. Where do we fall on dessert?
Oh, we are 1,000% on board with dessert.
All right.
I mean, if it was just like,
Here we go.
you know, the first thing you ate as part of the meal, I mean, that would be
Okay.
totally fine. We will be adventurous. We will be daring, all with dessert.
Okay, you know what, Sloane? Saved it all right there. You can be as picky as you want with the other stuff. Me and our producer, Tom Bowman, we will go through all that other stuff, and we will
Okay.
come together like Voltron for dessert, because that's the most, like you said it's the most important part of every meal. If I could eat it first with every meal and I wouldn't get weird looks in restaurants, I absolutely would do it. So donuts, desserts, all the above, we're good to go.
Absolutely. And that's what I just had to get it off my chest, you know, because then people make fun of me because there's sometimes where I like cheese, but sometimes I don't. I'll eat a pizza, but I don't want a cheeseburger. And people are like, I don't understand you. And I said, neither do I. But I really just had to get that off my chest. And I appreciate the acceptance and that we can bond. I mean, maybe like I know we're going to be getting donuts, but like maybe we do need to find like an ice cream place.
Oh, we absolutely.
And or.
He'll find one.
I don't know much about myself, but I know I have an ability, and this is for anyone listening, and this is part of the reason, Sloane, I was excited to have you on, is we're going to be teammates all year. Hopefully we're going to be able to get you back on this podcast as we keep going through the season and getting to tell these stories here. But I'm going to unabashedly solicit help. Like, we are going to be documenting this experience for everyone. If you're listening to this, at GoJo Show on Twitter, or download, subscribe, rate, and review, the 5-star rating, leave us the review. If we are coming to your college town, and if we're this weekend, it'll be Gainesville, Florida. We said next weekend it'll be Stillwater, Oklahoma. The weekend after that, we'll be out at UW in Seattle. If we are coming to your town and you've got suggestions for especially dessert and donut places, ice cream and donuts, we are your people. We want to know those answers here. Guide us, hold us by the hand here, because we want to make sure we do this right and we serve the listener and the viewer as best we can, Sloane. That's really, we do it because we care about the people.
That's exactly right. I mean, what people want, they want you to go to their favorite local establishment. They hold out this hope. Will it be as good to an out-of-towner? There's a lot of pressure there. Like, absolutely go do that and give us suggestions, because, I mean, you don't often like come back around. I mean, I don't have another reason to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I'm sure it'll be great. And maybe it does rate highly on the urbanist scale. A lot of college campuses tend to, so we shall see. But you know, that's what this is about at its core.
Okay, what's the scale? What's the ranking for the urbanist? Like, what's the like 5-star Rotten Tomatoes of urbanist culture?
That is
Like
true.
in terms of a city?
So I like what are you most drawn to? Because, for example, we have a friend of ours, Charlotte Wilder, who also covers college football for Fox and is going to be out and about this fall. She admitted to us on this podcast that she is really obsessed with large buildings, massive airplanes, and gigantic ships and boats. And she's fascinated. She had her favorites rattled off right away. I didn't know if there were particular structures or things that you found yourself drawn to from the urbanist perspective, because they feel kind of tangent.
That is very interesting. I would say it's more of like a structure. It's like looking at a place. Like, do you go and feel like as a pedestrian that like it's made for you as opposed to cars? You know, is there transit that's easy to get around? Are there bike lanes where you can where it just feels like kind of cozy is what you're looking for, not where it just feels like it's concrete slabs and like character. That's the word. Character is what you're looking for. I mean, I'm not an expert in architecture by any means, but like, I mean, there's not a whole lot of like Art Deco or like modernist architecture happening on college campuses. It's like a lot of brick. I think UF has just like a lot of brick and palm trees, which is like fine. That's like its style in Gainesville, but like that's what you're looking for. Character, charm, cozy.
Mike, before we
There you have it.
I have to go off of this because as soon as you said something about the Mac, And as soon as you talk about walkability and this culture, I remember the first time I took my fifth year at Ball State, chirp, who at this point in time probably have not met the line against Tennessee on Friday night. But home openers are important. Anyways, the coaches that were talking to me, they were like, I know this isn't Notre Dame. I know this isn't. But I was like, no, guys, I'm not a senior in high school. I'm a senior in college. I'm looking for different things. This campus is beautiful. Like the walkability here, like in Muncie, Indiana. The more you speak about it, the more I think about how beautiful and how accessible Ball State's campus is. So shouts out to the MAC and all the college football teams out there and just all the people that are going to go see their favorite universities this season. Like that's a really important part of it.
I know, right? Like just being back on campus, whether you went there or not, is just like this special feeling. Like I feel that too when I'm traveling around the Big Ten, and I'm sure I will for football as well, even if you're looking at these like colossal stadiums. But I was actually on the University of Minnesota campus the other day because there's just so many good restaurants. Like that's a really good example of like a really well done like urban campus. And then I just hear off in the distance at Huntington Bank Stadium, the band is practicing, and just like walking right up to it because everything's really accessible. And I'm just like watching the band practice for their home opener. And it's like, these are the special college football feelings that I need to have. And it happens all on campus.
It's so true. I walked into the Varsity Donut Shop in Manhattan, Kansas, and I saw the band there, and it looked like the drum group all sitting at a table, and they were doing their final practice walkthrough, drumming on the table inside this donut shop that was a stone's throw from the campus. So like you said, it is all of those finer notes, and so for anyone who's got those kind of tips for us, this is what we want to do all year. This is what we hope we can bring to Learfield college football Saturday nights. Have a blast being out there. Sloane, I'm very excited to learn even more about each other's travel habits as we go through this season, the various eating habits here, but a bond forged in dessert is a pretty strong place to start this season. So I'm looking forward to this, very excited, and thank you for coming and giving us some time here on this podcast before you and I go spend like an hour together in another meeting that we get to do for our second job this weekend.
Exactly. I'm so happy we have this foundation, that we're just able to get everything out there and find the most important commonality, and we'll be good to go.
Amen.
Truer words, never spoken. Brandon, good Lord, while we have college football's week 1 coming up, the NBA didn't feel like being left out of the news, apparently. Dear God in heaven, we got the Woj bomb that people have been waiting for, and man, oh man, the first group I thought of was New York Knicks fans, because former Utah Jazz point guard has been traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and Knicks fans who saw the news of them... Well, Knicks fans saw the news of them re-signing R.J. Barrett and knew that would likely have a complicating effect on their ability to go out and sign Donovan Mitchell. Those two teams had been linked. We hadn't heard Cleveland buzz, at least that I had seen, hardly anywhere. Obviously, I'd wave bye-bye to the NBA's offseason as a daily headline for me, but for them to come out of the woodwork here. So, the terms of the trade are as follows. Cleveland gets Donovan Mitchell. Utah is getting Lauri Markkanen, Ochai Agbaji, I apologize, I'm surely not pronouncing that name right, Colin Sexton, and 3 unprotected first-round picks, along with 2 pick swaps. Now, the initial aftermath of this is just a war of people tweeting GMs and talking about who got fleeced, everyone looking at Danny Ainge out in Utah and feeling like he'd done it again. We know Danny Ainge knows how to amass himself from picks. Now, if anything ever happens with those picks is always the other part of the Danny Ainge experience, but him and Sam Presti right now building the war chests in their respective teams between them and Oklahoma City. But, Brandon, I was surprised looking for the Cavs here. Didn't have to, and most Cleveland fans will say moving Darius Garland was going to be a non-starter, obviously. Jarrett Allen still on that team. Evan Mobley, Karis LeVert, a bunch of the core here still staying in Cleveland as they bring over Donovan Mitchell, who we know one of the most potent scorers in this league now in that backcourt with Darius Garland, making a pretty formidable 1-2 punch in the East right now, man. So, I don't know, initial reaction for me is they paid less, Cleveland did, to get him than Minnesota paid to get Rudy Gobert when Utah started breaking down this roster. Because remember, Rudy Gobert, the Jazz got from Minnesota Malik Beasley, Pat Bev, Leandro Balmaro, Walker Kessler, Jared Vanderbilt, and then a 2023 first rounder, a 25 first rounder, a 27 first rounder, a 29 first rounder, and a 2026 pick swap. So it was 5 picks, 5 players. Well, I think there was the 22 pick in the 22 draft, so that was a pick that turned into a player type thing. But more picks and more players. Now we'll wait and see what years and everything else shakes out for this. But initially, I look at this and go, all right, Danny Ainge was able to get a lot in return. A Utah team is stripping down the parts, moving on from what had been their core and trying to have an eye towards the future, while Cleveland, I'm sure, looks at this and says, we can continue to build, because they've had an exciting basketball team there. Cleveland in the East was a team that had a lot of guys they were excited about, like Darius Garland in this last season, and now you get to add a legitimate star in this league to a team that, since LeBron James, has been trying to figure out how to do that in this city. And so I initially look at it, it's lame to say everyone kind of gets what they want out of this trade, but I looked at Cleveland and initially thought, wow, I thought it would take a lot more as far as players from their young core to make this happen. I feel like they got to keep enough to where they can stay and believe in the Eastern Conference they're one of the top 6 or 7 teams, and Danny Ainge gets to walk away with a bunch of picks, which we know he loves. So I look at this as a pretty solid move for Cleveland, and just in general, a big deal, because we thought we were on the verge potentially this offseason of a star in their prime making their way to New York City to play for the Knicks, and once again that is thwarted.
Yes, the New York Knicks will have to stay with their homegrowns in the draft. They're doing okay in Tom Thibodeau's antics. But specifically for this move, Mike, why now for Utah? Like, it feels, obviously they had to move Donovan Mitchell, but it feels like maybe if they would have waited, they could have gotten more. Like why is it just Donovan? In your opinion, do you think it's just Donovan Mitchell knowing that he wants out, and then the franchise knowing that they need to start the rebuild as soon as possible?
Yeah, well, I think they again, having an eye towards a long-term future and getting the picks is a big part of this. And that was the one thing maybe about Cleveland you did hear, is they had picks to play with. But yeah, I think for Utah, with, we know the change in ownership and D Wade's group and everything being a part of that, Quinn Snyder stepping down and that changing of the guard there, Danny Ainge coming over, it was just a lot of new in there, and you thought, all right, with that, and with what we had known was growing unrest between the 2 star players on that team, once the Gobert trade happened, you kind of saw days were numbered, and maybe they just said, hey, if we're going to come in here and do all of this, we want to do it with a core that feels a little bit less antagonistic, even if that wasn't going to ultimately bleed as much in the day-to-day as we wanted it to believe. So from Utah perspective, stripping it down more or less to the studs and trying to build a new future. For Cleveland, the other part of this is, so part of this was Colin Sexton is going to now sign a 4-year, $72 million fully guaranteed deal as part of the sign-and trade with this, according to Rich Paul of Clutch Sports telling Woj at ESPN. So that's going to be part of it on one side for them, as Colin Sexton, was going to be due some money. Donovan Mitchell, I believe, has 4 years left on his current deal. So Cleveland is getting a player that they've got as much control as you can have in this league over, has a young core to build around, and while Donovan Mitchell, we know, doesn't really play any defense, offensively, this team's going to be a ton of fun and really relevant in the Eastern Conference in a way that, again, once LeBron left town, you weren't sure was going to be possible in all those ways. So big come up for Cleveland in this offseason, finding a way, because we know free agency is hardly ever going to be kind to that city because of geography. So they were going to have to pay a little bit of the Cleveland tax to get someone over there in a trade. And comparatively, it seems like they got off easier than I expected. So Cleveland, congratulations. This seems to be, and God, I don't want to jinx it, but an unproblematic pickup of a star player in your offseason that you can actually feel happy about in a way that's comfortable. Again, I don't want to jinx it, because shit, every day the Lord finds a new way to disappoint us, but I feel like right now, Cleveland, this one's for you. You
Yes.
can actually enjoy this. We're happy for you. So
Turn the
enjoy
corner.
that, Cavs. Knicks fans, if you decided to have hope at this point, that's your own damn fault. You should know better by now. Good things aren't destined to come your way. But
NBA fans all around win because we don't have to watch those late night Utah games anymore. It felt like wrong not watching Donovan Mitchell live at times, and now I can just kind of ignore those games. I'm happy for those times.
that is so true. We've done this dance with, really, I always called them the four corners teams out there between Phoenix, Utah, and Colorado. And Phoenix got themselves to the NBA Finals and lost to Milwaukee, so they validated that in way more than most. But for Utah and for Denver, it had always been, hey, these teams are near first place in the Western Conference during the season. You're supposed to take them seriously, even though every year we've watched them crap their pants in the postseason and feel like we know better by now. So it really is just, now it's just Denver. Now it's just Denver we got to contend with.
Oh, yeah. We can treat Utah like OKC now, and Denver just Jokic.
Yeah, it's Nikola Jokic, and how much time do you want to believe in that, knowing that when we get to the postseason, it's still going to be a lot of doubters out there. Cleveland, as more of this pours in from Woj as we're recording this, Cleveland sending its 3 unprotected picks to Utah in 25, 27, and 29, with pick swaps in 26 and 28. So along with the Rudy Gobert trade, Utah has gathered 13 unprotected or lightly protected picks through 2029. That is an insane haul. And it's the kind of debate we always have about the goals of teams. Cleveland gets to be fun and good right now. I don't think it's good enough to net them a championship in the Eastern Conference as presently constructed today, but they are going to be fun and they are going to be young. And they have a chance to be that way with this core for a little bit here. Utah has all this potential, and you can probably sell fans on that because, again, your reality had been you had been 20 at the blackjack table. Good enough to get beat. Yeah. Good hand, you can get excited about it, you can feel good, you can slap the table and all that shit, but at the end of the day, your dealer's sitting there with a face card, you're just ready to be disappointed.
And Cleveland is over there. They've been selling fun and young every year because they've been drafting fun and young. Now they can add talented to that.
Yes, exactly. Lots of talent now in there. A legitimate star player, maybe not a superstar, we always do those debates, but a definite star in this league in Donovan Mitchell. Brandon, when you are a star, and I will never forget DJ Swearinger. He's a defensive back out of South Carolina, safety out of South Carolina. I believe it was South Carolina.
Oh,
who was in the NFL draft class with me, who was training at the same facility I was, and he said, and this is very similar to Donovan Mitchell and the Cavaliers, his future was so bright he needed to wear sunglasses inside when we trained out in Scottsdale. He wore Gucci ski goggles into a workout. When asked by a veteran why, he said, "My future's so bright I need sunglasses." And so that same future so bright that you probably need sunglasses too, and that's where our friends at Knockaround Sunglasses come in. Polarized shades, just $30 a pair. My dad just got his shipment yesterday. Ooh. He is jazzed, folks. You and my dad came on this podcast and loudly complained that our friends at Knockaround had not made you feel the love, and so they responded quickly, Brandon. I know you got to unbox the other day, and we're very excited about that. You saw all of the benefit of 15 different frames, a ton of colors, and over 1 billion possible combinations in the Knockaround shop. Did you not?
I did. They customized to me specifically, Mike. A couple of Lakers lenses in there, a couple of Notre Dame lenses, a couple of Kentucky Fort Knox, like the most beautiful pair of sunglasses I've seen, Knockaround or not, but they are Knockaround, and it makes it even better. I can't wait to. I don't want to brag about how many that was sent my way. I just know that I have quite a bit to choose from all season long while I'm out there basically knocking around.
That's the whole point. You can be fresh, you can be game day fresh each and every weekend with something different that suits your need, because for around $30 per pair, you can afford that. These are accessible, these are great looking, they're functional. Runner's World Magazine named them as a 2021 editor's choice if you want to get active in them. Lightweight, great clarity, all the above. Knockaround sunglasses are high-quality polarized sunglasses at a truly affordable price. Check out their huge range of shades at knockaround.com. Get like us, and for an even better deal, Type in promo code GOJO for 20% off at checkout. Again, knockaround.com and use promo code GOJO to get yourself 20% off at checkout. We appreciate you sticking with us. A little bit chaotic around the Donovan Mitchell trade because of all of that coming in right as we were recording this. It's a little bit of live radio in podcast form, which is fun, man. Breaking news is always exciting, especially something like that came a little bit out of left field at us. But Brandon, what we've had a lot of time to prepare for is the start of college football season. Week 1 begins this weekend. We've got plenty of great game action coming up. But before we get to something we want to do around here on Fridays, which is give you our pick 6, pick spelled with 2 C's, because much like the thick 6 that we hope to see in every college football weekend where a big man takes one to the house, we want to get you our picks out there, start to be honest, and put it on wax so that we can all keep track of this and see if we can help win anybody some money along the way. Our friends at DraftKings Sportsbooks are going to have a fun bit of way that we can help you out with them as we go into the weekend. But Brandon, before we get to that, I want to put our playoff picks on wax. We know college football season is about so many things. There's so much to love about the sport that is outside just the playoffs, but we do want to have those out there just so we can say I told you so when these things inevitably become true. So, Brandon, putting it down here. I want to do it.
Okay.
College football playoff, and I think this year is and listen, I want to be right about these, and so unfortunately we know college football can be a little bit unfun in the regard that it's a lot of the usual suspects here. I got Alabama and Ohio State in there as the obvious picks. I think those are the 2 best teams in college football this year that, aside from injury, are a pretty locked group to make it to the college football playoff. I am going to give Georgia a trip back to the college football playoff as well. I think so much of our conversation the other day with Richard Johnson about what they can pose offensively that's unique, while defensively they are going to be different and certainly not the otherworldly all-time great that we saw. They just lost so much. They were replaced with a ton of talent, including a guy that may be the best D lineman in college football in Jalen Carter this year. I think they've got a path back to the CFP. And then the one, and listen, they're a team that's got legitimate playoff hopes and I believe can make it happen. I am going to get to see them this weekend. I think Utah can find a way to do it this year. I think they've got the right amount of momentum from last season. I'm going Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Utah. I think you've got a veteran quarterback in Cam Rising coming back. I think you've got a defense that is sturdy, got some transfer help with Mahmoud Diabate on defense coming over from Florida, along with a couple of younger guys that they're really excited about, a defensive secondary that's got ball hawks in, and a D-line that brings back the Pac-12 Defensive Freshman of the Year. I think you combine that with what they've got schedule-wise, a potential to get a win this opening weekend on the road in Florida. While they're not a ranked Florida team, it's a hostile environment. It's an SEC non-con opponent. Utah's only played one. This is only their second matchup against an SEC school. So this is a big show for them. They have a schedule that gets them USC at home during the year, and then they get to go on the road late in the season against an Oregon team that we'll see what they are in year 1 under Dan Lanning. They've got a tough test against Georgia and Atlanta this weekend. But if that's a good Oregon team that Utah smacked twice last year under a different regime, albeit, but if they can go out there and get a road win late in the season in that environment and maybe set them up for another Pac-12 championship, and we'll see if that is, whoever pops out into that, but I just think it lines up for them structurally, and they've got the pieces you usually look for in a team that can make this happen. So they'll be the one spot I look and reach as we juggle Clemson's and other teams in that 4th spot. So long-winded answer there, but Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Utah for me, Brandon. Do you have a top 4 that you want to throw out there? Do you feel good about?
Feel good about? Of course not. I think it's fair to say Alabama and Ohio State, but I'm a bit of an anarchist, so I would only want to put one in that slot. And I'm going to stick with my Midwestern roots. I'm going to say Ohio State. I have to say Alabama. What am I talking about? Alabama, Ohio State. But the wild card, Mike, that I want to throw in there, especially for the Pac-12, is this Lincoln Riley USC team.
Year 1.
I like the narrative that get pushed around it, and I'm looking at Notre Dame's schedule because I kind of wanted to have either or in there. I just feel like USC is playing. They don't have Marshall on their schedule. I know there's some comparable stuff out there, but it just looked like the strength of schedule.
So
it
you're
may be
going
Notre Dame's
Ohio State.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Let's say you're going Alabama, Ohio State. Are you locking USC in there?
Yes.
All right. Alabama, Ohio State, USC, and then who would be your fourth team?
Oh God, Mike. I think Clemson.
All right.
That's what I'm going with. That's what I'm going with.
Oh, listen, Clemson's certainly one of everyone's favorites. That defense looks like it's going to be Death Star level personnel. And then offensively, it's just going to be figuring out if DJU is going to be your quarterback or if there's going to be a change made there. So I think a lot of people would look at that, Brandon, the way that the ACC is still currently constructed.
Yes.
Pitt going to be breaking in a new quarterback who won the conference last year. Miami, first year for Mario Cristobal. Can Tyler Van Dyke get that thing up and running right away? NC State and Dave Doran. They bring back a veteran quarterback. They lose pieces in the wide receiver room and the offensive line. So there's plenty of interesting there, but picking Clemson is usually, like buying Coca-Cola as stock. It's usually not going to go wrong for you. In a down year last year, they won 10 games. That was how bad things got, air quotes, for Clemson last season.
That's true. I'm just thinking right now in the conference realignment talk that we're in, I think these, instead of having those double SEC playoff championships that we have, and I hate every time we get to that point, I feel like these different conferences, the top is going to start eating to kind of prove that they should be where they should be. And like we said, we've seen Clemson in these spots, obviously they've had otherworldly quarterbacks like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence at the helm. So obviously the play was otherworldly, but they've shown that they've been the best team in college football. So I like a flavor from each. A little bit of each, and I also like Notre Dame to be in that next six in the fall in the best of.
Well, you talk about two of your playoff teams that Notre Dame would have to face, so that would be, I think, indicative that Notre Dame would have to be a quality win for those teams, especially because it's considered, at least for especially USC, out of conference. Clemson, you can argue the half in, half out thing. So at GoJo Show on Twitter, download, subscribe, rate, and review. Let us know your playoff picks. Get them out there now. We're taking them leading up until this weekend. We know there were games played last night. There's games going to be playing Friday night, but it's week one. Get them in before the line. Get them in before the boat closes on Saturday, and we'll all be good to go. So that's what we got for that, Brandon. We'll also give you, and we want to start doing this, the pick six. We'll give you 6 picks going into every football weekend. So it'll be a mix of college and NFL as far as some of the lines that we're excited about, all courtesy of our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, the picks are as follows for me, Brandon, this week. And there's obviously a bunch of hipster picks in here. Some are vibes-based, some are actual stat-based. Okay. You're not going to know the difference. I'm just going to give you them in a gaggle right here. I got Coastal Carolina -2 against Army. I got App State +1 against North Carolina. Taken, and we'll see. I put this out there on the internet at Mike Golick Jr. on Twitter already, so we'll know by the time you're hearing this podcast whether Pitt covered. Pitt -7.5 against West Virginia in the backyard brawl from Thursday night. Middle Tennessee State +6 against newly FBS-bound James Madison.
Ooh.
And then to finish it off, the last two, because we don't have NFL built in, that'll start next weekend. I got 2 for you from the Notre Dame game here. And this is where our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook are going to come to play. So I got Notre Dame +17. You could have got them at +17.5 earlier, which could be helpful because we know this could potentially be a tough one. But right now, as I'm recording this on DraftKings Sportsbook, that game is Notre Dame +17. I think that's a lot of points for an Irish team that game script-wise is going to do a lot to keep this closer, even if it ends up being in a losing effort. But the one thing I'm excited about and the one thing that DraftKings is going to be great on is the bet I want to help with a profit boost, the profit boost pack for game one this weekend here. DraftKings is going to run a 25% profit boost pack for one pregame bet and one live bet specifically for the Notre Dame-Ohio State game. And we want to help you out with a potential for the pregame pick. And that pregame pick for me, Brandon, is Notre Dame over 4.5 first quarter points. I think when you look at what Notre Dame has the potential to do well. The difference of this team we talked about is going to be up front of the running game, better offensive line, and a rushing attack that not only has a great back like Chris Tyree and a deep group there, but also a quarterback in Tyler Buckner, who we've seen make use of his legs. Tyler Buckner was not in full-time duty last year, and so when you look at Notre Dame's splits in the red zone in the first quarter, a lot more passing. I think we're going to see much more rushing attack, and most importantly, an offensive coordinator in Tommy Rees, who I think scripts openers as well as anybody when you talk about those first group of plays that a team is planning in the lead up to a game, throwing their best stuff. Tommy Rees has the personnel to vary formations, throw a lot of creative stuff at you, and get off to a fast start. Marcus Freeman was talking about how they've structured their practices to go straight from stretching lines into competitive periods, into live action to try and mimic a fast start in a game.
Wow.
And I think for Notre Dame, that's going to be their best shot to land a punch early, is going out here in a game where we know they can't settle for field goals. I think they're going to be playing aggressive. I think Marcus Freeman is going to learn that coming off of their bowl game loss to Oklahoma State, where there was a couple spots where he didn't keep the foot down on the gas as far as aggressiveness and key decision-making spots. And so all of that leads me to, I think Notre Dame's going to be able to get 7 on the board in the first quarter. So with that profit boost, Notre Dame over 4.5 points in the first quarter is at, I believe, plus 110 on DraftKings Sportsbook. With that 25% profit boost pack, you're going to get that at about plus 138. So make yourself a little bit more money. Go with the bet that, again, even that game, for me, emotionally hedging for Notre Dame right now, let that one help you out. Notre Dame over 4.5 in the first quarter based on all those things that we just said. So there's our first pick 6 for the season. We'll track all these as we go. We'll see how we do on these. If we have to adjust the process during the season, then we will do just that. But heavy college this weekend because we're waiting for the NFL Week 1 to start next weekend. So as always, at Mike Golick Jr. is where I'll put those out on Friday, get them right for the weekend. I put them out on Thursday this week just so we can include the backyard brawl in that one because I felt strongly about that game. But Brandon, all that being said, business handled. It's Friday. It's time to ask the question that's on everyone's mind.
Oh, shit.
Do you know what time it is, Brandon?
If I had to give you my... It's only been a year, and I've got my foot through the door, and I ain't going nowhere. It took a while to get me in, and I'm gonna take my time. Don't fight that good in your ear. Now this, that, and the third.
Oh, I'm all set, thank you. Incredible. Sorry, I had to take a moment to compose myself here. I was getting emotional. Brandon bringing his A-game on the first Friday of the college football season. Well, the first real Friday, week 0.
Yes. Let me blow your mind, Mike.
Here. Brandon, mission accomplished. Brandon, let me blow your mind with this, because while John Gruden made some news over this past week for coming out, he spoke Tuesday at a Little Rock Touchdown Club in Arkansas and talked about the email scandal that ended up costing him his job with the Raiders. He said, quote, "I'm ashamed about what has come about in these emails, and I'll make no excuses for it. It's shameful, but I'm a good person. I believe that. I go to church. I've been married for 31 years. I've got 3 great boys. I still love football. I've made some mistakes, but I don't think anyone in here hasn't. And I'll just ask for forgiveness, and hopefully I get another shot." So, Brandon, while that brand of white man confidence in its own is certainly very impressive.
For someone who had a second shot.
Yes. Man, I'm sure John Gruden believes all that stuff. I'm sure John Gruden is probably looking at this from the perspective like, hey, how were my emails the only ones that got let out? We have a lot of questions about the other emails connected to that Washington football team probe.
Oh, my gosh. But let John
what, Brandon?
Gruden
The wild part is...
Please, go ahead. Oh, I was saying let John Gruden tell it, though. He's going to end up telling on himself some more, and he was like, "Now I know this guy said we say that all the time when we talk to each other."
Yes, exactly. That's just how we talk to each other. Maybe a thing that eventually gets said over the course of this. But all that aside, I'm happy for John Gruden's marriage. I'm happy that he goes to church and that his family is doing well.
Amen.
I don't think those things necessarily equate to absolving him of what went on in this situation in the ways that he thinks there, but we know how this league works. None of us will be surprised when John Gruden is working in pro football again. But Brandon, I think one of the other more interesting things that came up about the Raiders was a breakdown of their draft picks in that era with Mike Mayock and John Gruden. So Bleacher Report Gridiron put up the list of the Raiders draft picks from 2018 to 2021. In 2018, you had their second-round pick defensive tackle P.J. Hall cut after failing a physical. Their third-round defensive end Arden Key released. In 2019, Cleveland Ferrell, their first-round draft pick, Josh Jacobs, their first-round draft pick, and safety Jonathan Abram all were denied their fifth-year option by the team, as well as their second-rounder Trayvon Mullen traded for a conditional seventh-rounder. In 2020, their first-round pick, Henry Ruggs III, we know has far more serious things than football, now potentially dealing with his future, and cornerback Damon Arnett were both waived. Third-round pick, running back, and wide receiver Lynn Bowden was traded to the Dolphins. Brian Edwards was traded to the Falcons. Tanner Muse was released. And in 2021, their first-round draft pick, Alex Leatherwood, was waived after just one season. Brandon, even if it's a new regime that wanted to just start a clear house on the old regime, that is an abysmal record for a team that, again, was within a game.
Right.
Within a game of being playoff bound last year. Like, that was how close it got last season. It was amazing.
And they had some winners in there, obviously. Those are glaring mistakes. But after you get around the glitz and glam of the first round, where a lot of people make their mistakes, obviously a lot of bad franchises, and I'll just say bad teams in the draft, are bad teams that don't draft well. But, like, obviously,
I'm sorry,
we talk about Clemson.
They were a playoff team last year. I forgot about that week 18. They were a playoff team last year. I misspoke on that. So all of this for a team that somehow made the playoff, which should indicate to you that, man, maybe we have underweighted Derek Carr's performance in all of this even more than we've already talked about.
No, I think you have. For specifically, you keep bringing up that he's number 15 to 12 anywhere in between the season. Like, he has done a lot with the little. And to think about all he's had to fight with at the very, very top the entire time, he actually may be covered by Christ. So, like, we need to stop disrespecting Derek Carr so much because, but like I said, Max Crosby, you got Hunter Renfrow. Like, there's been some wins in those draft classes, but those glaring misses at the first round are those things that get you fired.
Well, it's very indicative and very similar to what we've seen from the Patriots for so many years. We've talked about Bill Belichick's recent track record of their top picks, especially at wide receiver and skill position. But you're right. The Raiders have hit on some late rounders. You had the Devontae Adams acquisition and free agency this year, Chandler Jones on defense. So there's balance to all these procedurally. But good Lord, that's a rough stretch for anyone by any metric. Brandon, though, let's get to some good news in that. And that good news comes from the University of South Carolina, because according to reports from Brett McMurphy at Action Sportsnet, Sir Big Spur will remain the name of South Carolina's live mascot after briefly being named the General after the two families in the administration reconnected and found a solution in the best interest. We hadn't reported on the update of this story, Brandon. They had gone with the General instead of Cock Commander, which took the internet by storm a week ago. Doing the wrong thing ends up getting bailed out by a family willing to do the right thing. But Brandon, I think this still holds out hope that in the future at some point, as we saw from members of that team, Cock Commander was the name that the people wanted on this. So I applaud Sir Big Spur for what went on here, but...
Listen, maybe it's time for two mascots because we need a Cock Commander in that stadium.
Listen, Spencer Rattler came out and said, the transfer quarterback from Oklahoma, I thought the name was Cock Commander when it got changed to the General. So I think you're going to have a hard time convincing the college football public that mascot is now not named Cock Commander. They can keep calling it Sir Big Spur. I think any of us, and if I have a chance to do a South Carolina game this year, I promise you I will walk down to the field, I will salute Cock Commander, and I will give him the respect that he's deserved. That is a promise I make to you, our listener.
We all have a lot of names, Mike. They call me Brandon, Big B, Fat Ass. They call you Gojo Jr., Michael, Mike. And, you know, this guy can be Big Spur Cock Commander.
GoJo, Mike Jr., Mike, nepotism hire, it's all the same. So we'll allow him the grace of having multiple names. But again, cooler heads prevailed in South Carolina once they saw the groundswell of support. I don't think it was cooler heads. I think it was fear that drove them back to this, saying, we can't name it something different because they won't accept anything but Cock Commander. So we got to find a way to make this work with Sir Big Spur. But Brandon, let's get to the third, because this is maybe one of the longest. We talked about paying off the storyline with Katie Nolan and Aaron Boone over a long season. Twitter's war with the concept of an edit button may now be coming to an end. Twitter Inc. put out the announcement that they are launching an edit button for the first time, both internally and externally. And there's been some debate about whether this feature is good, whether this is bad. People have always wanted this. The edit feature will soon be available to users who pay $4.99 a month for the Twitter Blue service. The edit tweet feature, as it will be called, will let users make changes to their tweet for up to 30 minutes after it's initially published. Tweets that are edited will carry a label, and others on Twitter will be able to click on the label to see a prior version of the post. They are specifically testing this with a small group, trying to troubleshoot this at the beginning, because, Brandon, there were a lot of people concerned that bad actors would find a way to use this edit button to deceive people online. And so this seems to be some level of transparency that Twitter's trying to go for, to give you a limited window to just fix, hopefully, in its best version. People wanted this for grammatical mistakes and things like that. Right. We know there's always going to be bad people that try and do bad things with this, but overall, I think with some of these involved and the transparency that should be a part of this, maybe people can finally find a new thing to complain about when it comes to the Bird app.
Yeah, I love that, because you finally found the things to put it, the right velvet ropes to put the edit button behind, right? Subscription. You have to be paying for Twitter Blue. You can only have 30 minutes to reset that. And then also you have a receipt at the end of the day. So there's enough going on to deter the people that want to use it for nefarious purposes, in my opinion. But also, as much as I saw the chirpings of editing or having an edit button on Twitter, people don't understand, man. It's different. It's the wire. You say what you say. You got to stand on it. And also, once you tweet it, it's almost like an image. It can be taken and moved around. So what do we look like editing something? Like we're going to get a 3 dots if somebody's like in the middle of like changing a source on something. Like, listen, we got to have some type of like finiteness in this reality that we live in online. Twitter offers the best version of it.
There is just something tough about hitting send on a tweet that you think is going to do numbers, and then having there be a spelling mistake that's glaring enough to where other people probably aren't going to retweet it in the way the content deserves. And so from that standpoint, as someone who's had that happen more times than I'm proud of, the edit button would definitely be a big help there. I got into the point where I could live without it, Brandon. We had played the game long enough by a certain set of rules to where I don't think this was going to change my life a ton, and I wasn't going to beg for it. But now that it's here, I'm sure it'll come in handy every once in a while, and I'm sure bad people will do bad things with it, because that's what this website is. But we'll see. We'll let the people paying for it, because I tell you what I damn sure I'm not doing is paying $5 a month to go on this hellscape website and pollute my brain with all the shit that I already let in here. That being said, we appreciate you polluting your brain with this show. Follow us on that godless bird app, at GoJo Show on Twitter, at Brother Brandon, and at Mike Golick Jr. And download, subscribe, rate, and review GoJo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating with a review. Make sure you keep going and checking out. Smash the thumbs up button on the DraftKings YouTube page. Subscribe there. Check out the GoJo with Mike Golick Jr. playlist, and look at our bright smiling faces all week long. Everybody, we made it. Enjoy college football's week 1. We will be stress tweeting through a lot of it. You can catch me on Learfield Audio, wherever you get Learfield. This weekend for Utah, at Florida, with Sloane Martin, who you heard on the podcast today. Can't wait. It is finally real. Thank y'all so much. Be safe, and we'll talk to you next week.